Blip, 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 blip. Hey, nerds. So today is the day that we talk about staff units, how they have become the weakest units in the game, and probably annoy some people. I'm hoping for that annoying part. Anyways, alrighty, so let's talk about it, shall we? But before we begin, let me just say that I do have a correction for last episode. I said there were 5 Dragonstone units. There are actually 6. So feel free to get your pitchforks out and be mad at me. I will commit Sudoku, and we will have puzzle games, okay? Alrighty, so starting up, let's talk about Tempest Trials. Now, you might be going, what? Well, Tempest Trials is a brutal onslaught of, stages after stages after stages where you fight. And basically, if you've gone through this, you probably, think, hey, wouldn't a healer be a great idea to bring along for this? And, occasionally your characters are going to get hit. That's just going to be what happens. Be it in a counter, be it whatever. Sometimes you're going to get a little injured from something, and a heal would be a great idea. But chances are, if you're like me, you don't run a healer at all. In fact, you don't usually run anything like that. Instead, what you do is you bring along characters like my Alm here, who happen to run a somewhat pseudo renewal build that allows them to do, well, the healing, the support, while also providing some damage when needed. And that's just kind of how this runs, and something I've noticed a lot more in the game as time has gone on. Things like Falchion, and then of course Renewal, and then things like Reciprocal Aid, Ardent Sacrifice. You could potentially run a healing character who can really do the healing that's needed without really needing a healer, which is really odd in this game, because you would think a supportive type like a healing unit would be needed, and yet here we are in this new world, this new idea where basically you just run a Falchion user and you get the same results. And hell, you don't even need to run a Falchion user. Instead, I've run Celica in almost all of those, and, most of the recent ones, she has the same sort of thing. 1 renewal, and, a little bit of heals here and there. She does just fine. She does what a healer would need to be. And that's kind of the idea of what's going on. When your support class that's made to support is being outclassed by units that just can be built as pseudo-support, there are problems. And I guess the best example would probably to be, look at some characters like, here's Lachesis, which I'm sure a lot of people are really happy to see. And there's usually 4 things that make up a healer unit. There's, of course, their staffs, there's their heals, there's their special skills, which, include things like bombs, and then, of course, there's the, the miscellaneous kind of stuff that comes with it. Typical, C skills, B skills, what have you. But there's only one thing that can really be transferred from the healer to any other units, and that's, of course, their, usually their miscellaneous skill. Sometimes they end up with something that is totally exclusive to, well, healers. And, this is one of the many problems that kind of comes with it, mostly in that they are not even useful for really bringing things over unless you need a spur, or, sometimes they don't even have that. Sometimes they have Live to Serve as their B slot and can't even transfer that over. But mostly, we're not here to talk about their, miscellaneous. We're instead here to talk about their heals, their abilities, and things like that. So, one thing that comes out of their staffs are usually that, well, as they upgrade it from Assault, they also go into something like Absorb here, but mostly, let me see if I could find someone who actually has a good debuff staff. That would be, okay, so here's Sakura. Sakura, when she uses hers, of course, at the end, it inflicts attack, but this is the thing, we've gone over this with dagger users before. Right now, this is not a valid way of debuffing, at least in this game, because, well, when the mere presence of being around someone who has a threaten, it does the job a lot better. Just how it goes. What was that? I heard something. Anyways, usually you don't want your healers to be attacking anyways, because that usually means that they might be countered, and that's always a bad thing. Then we, of course, have their heals, and let me just tell you, oh boy, there are a lot of problems here, of course. So, right now in this game, there's only one real good heal. And while Physic is neat and gives, 8 HP at a range, chances are you've probably noticed that one heal that reigns supreme. And of course, we're going to talk about that in a second, but there are a lot of variations on the heals that are in the game right now. But there's one that reigns supreme because, well, it's just a simplistic and easy to get one. So here is Rehabilitate. And Rehabilitate is essentially the one ability that really matters when it comes to healers. All it really does is that the lower the unit that you're healing, the more HP it will recover. Now, if the unit is below like 1/5 of their HP, that is basically a full heal. And there is really no reason to run any sort of other command skill that would do anything of the sort. All Rehabilitate, all day. It's basically what it is. Occasionally you might find Martyr, which does do the same sort of thing, but it's based on your healer's current HP. But most people run Rehabilitate because it's just such a good ability. And really, that says volumes about how healers work right now. Then we, of course, have things like, whoa, I don't know what's going on with my capture card. That's really weird. But anyways, then we have things like bombs. And, I don't really find bombs to be that interesting as it goes along. Because more often than not, you're running hones, you're running things. And, like, for my Priscilla, I could actually do better if I ran something like Heavenly Light. Because in a horse unit, Cavalier team, they're being buffed by Fortifies and Hones for their Cavaliers, so, for the Cavalier team, I should say. So things like bombs are not useful, because they don't stack with Hones, they are the green numbers, they're not invisible like Spurs, so instead, it's just not worthwhile, and that kind of goes for a lot of bombs. Now, you can make this work in a team, but it does require need to heal, it does require triggering the special abilities that come with it. Usually, especially if you're running Rehabilitate, this is going to take a bit because it charges it up to 2, and you're going to need to heal twice to get there. Actually, I think you're going to need to heal 3 times, both times to activate the ability and then, actually activating the ability. It's not the best advantage for it. Then, of course, we have to talk about all the other stuff that comes with it. Now, I know a lot of people already know this, but, staff users, when they use their staff weapons, they don't actually get the capabilities that they need to, they don't get the ability, to use that attack, really that attack stat that they have, because it gets halved by staff users. Granted, that did get kind of fixed with Jenny here, but the problem is it's hidden behind Jenny, and Jenny is a 5-star only unit. Add to the fact that mostly, that is something, again, we've kind of addressed this before, a lot of staff users don't really have the accessibility to give certain, abilities long, even as fodder. You can see here that Jenny only has Wrathful Staff. That's not very useful to anyone who's outside of the healing spectrum. Add to the fact that also healers also lose access to a lot of other abilities that could really help them out in the whole attacking thing if you were to go with Jenny. Their A slot is really restricted in a lot of ways. You can't run things like Fury or Life and Death. You usually have to attach something like Attack Plus to them, which is also kind of detrimental to them. But here's the thing. I don't think, Jenny was not really going to be a all-in-all-out fix. Wrathful Staff and how it works is not going to be something that's going to really bring them up. Because, let's just face it, staff units, really, they're not meant to be huge all-out attackers anyways. They're meant to be, this, I feel, was an attempt to just try to make them for, in case you need to use a unit who can, who can do some damage. I ran into a Jenny who was able to finish off, some units with an Absorb Staff because she was, she was the last unit there. She was able to do it. But even then, I don't feel, even if you were to remove the 5-star wall from her, push her down to 4, it would probably still not really alleviate the issues that staff users face, where essentially a lot of their abilities are not really useful. Bombs, they're overtaken by any sort of hone or fortify, and those are easily accessible to any unit, and do not require a special trigger. Then, of course, we have things, they do have access to hones and fortifies themselves, I guess, but still, this really doesn't alleviate their issue. Right now, they're supposed to be the supporting healer type, but they can be replaced by anyone running a renewal build and having Reciprocal Aid or Ardent Sacrifice. What we need for them is not a simple easy fix like Jenny to try and make them a powerhouse in the damage stat, because they can't really do that. None of these, I mean, while Elise is probably the premier, character when it comes to trying to be this really powerful, attacking staff user, it's not going to happen. They can do some good damage. She can do good damage, but even then, it's not alleviating the problem that other healers have, where they can't have the attack stat. What we need is better supporting skills for them. We need different types of staves that can do certain things. There were staves in other games that did things like teleportation or gave barriers or protection buffs that weren't, really that powerful, or things like berserk staves, which I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't be crazy about, but still, right now we need something to give them the edge up on supporting abilities, because they are the units made to be that. Essentially, when you're being outplayed by a character running renewal, that is not a good sign, and that is not something that will really aid them. They are supposed to be the premier support characters, and yet here we are with characters that, granted, certain characters like, Lynn was a step in the right direction with things like Candlelight and, of course, Dazzling Staff. These are interesting abilities that allow and negate follow-up attacks and counter-attacks, things like that. I should say just counter-attacks, sorry. But still, you get the basic idea, right? When you're being outplayed by units that are not meant to be what you are, that's a problem. That's a big, big problem. And this is something that's going to be constant with healers and staff units in general, because they are stuck in their own little spot. They're restricted in almost every way, from damage to abilities to passives. They can't bring those things along. I forgot to mention that their special skills are also restricted because, well, they have their own little special pool that they can really get to. Their special triggers, their command skills, whatever you want to call them, those are all restricted in certain ways. So basically, well, they are stuck in a certain situation where we need them to be able to do things, and they can't. Either be it, that slight bit more of damage or that little bit more of support. They need stronger supporting skills to be able to be the premier support unit. And, as much as I don't like Rehabilitate, I think the other ones... as much as I like Rehabilitate, I should say, I think the other heals could probably stand to get a little bit of a buff as well, because, well, all you really do as a healer is wait for someone to get really low, run over to them, heal them. That's full heal right there. Rehabilitate. Premier. I'm going to say Premier a lot. But, when you can't be the support you're supposed to be, it's a really big problem, and there's a reason why almost all the healers, if you ever look at the tier list, they are way down at the bottom. If you were to ever look at them, chances are they're nowhere near where you want them to be. But yeah, that's basically healers right now. What would you guys think for, trying to up them up a bit, to make them a bit stronger than what they are? What would you do? I'd love to hear your input, guys. So for now, I'm going to get going. Hope you guys have a great evening. I'll catch you all later. Bye.